Hi everyone, I'm Marcos, YepCode co-founder, and YepCode is a low-code platform based on beautiful Spain. This is a demonstration to show you how YepCode can transform the way you develop quick and powerful integrations and automations. So let's dive right in. YepCode is one enterprise-ready automation integration low-code tool developed by devs and for devs. And right now we allow to build these integrations using JavaScript or Python. Okay, so we help companies to enjoy a corporate serverless functions environment with all the steroids that any developer could need: credentials and libraries management, webhooks and scheduling, logging and audit, a CLI to work offline, a data store, also a collaborative environment to share the work with your colleagues, and also some on-prem options, okay, for some enterprise clients. The motivation behind the code is that we have been using no-code tools for simple integrations for a very long time, but we have realized that we can be, if you have coding skills, you can be much more effective when you are moving information than using a drag and drop approach. Okay, that's the way that we go against the no-code stream. Okay, and we provide all the development and executive environment that allows you to talk with any kind of services or APIs under a low-code approach. Okay, how our clients are using YepCode? Well, they use it as an ETL platform, but for complex integrations, okay? But also to connect any CRM, ERP database, or create custom forms, or create serverless backend functions, etc. Okay. So let's dive in and I show you the platform. Okay. So when you're logging into the platform, you'll see your dashboard. It's a multi-tenant platform, so you can have a lot of teams. And this is our sandbox. Okay, so let's get started with the most simple use case, our hello world. Okay, and here you can see that this hello world process has one script, in this case a JavaScript, that picks some parameters, build one message, logs that message, and returns this message. Okay, each process can have one input parameter form. Okay, in this case we are just asking for the name, but this form could be as complex as you could need, asking for any kind of information. We also include a form builder that is very interesting to fit your SAP needs. Okay, if you don't know to write the JSON schema, that is the spec that we follow, you can also use our form builder. Okay, so each process also has a README that is a markdown document where you can document a documentation for your process. So having the process implemented, for sure here you could be writing anything that you could need. Okay, you may start one execution. Okay, so when we start one execution, the form is shown and you may fill it, and when you press run, the execution starts. Okay, this execution hasn't gone anywhere, no, because we haven't talked with any external service. But for example, this other process, we have one MySQL credential here, and we could add any other integration that from the one supported. Okay, any AWS, Google Cloud, Oracle, Postgres, MySQL, SMTP to send mails, Snowflake. And how the integrations work in YepCode. Okay, this is our docs. We have an awesome documentation. So when you work, for example, with Snowflake, what we provide is a wrapper over the Snowflake driver. Okay, so you are using in JavaScript the Snowflake npm package. Okay, and in Python the Snowflake pp package. So when you are writing code in YepCode, you don't have real vendor lock-in because you are writing JavaScript and you are using open source integration. This is a very interesting approach that we follow because in this way clients are not tied to our platform. Okay, and it's something that developers also are looking for. Okay. In this case, we have one SQL sentence. We have some parameters. These parameters are requested in one form again. Okay, and we create the MySQL client using the credentials already created on the client, on the platform. Sorry, and then we start the query and return the results. Okay, so if we start this execution, we'll see that this is open in the connection, and here it is, the results from our query. Okay, let's say that we want to pick information from one database and then create one insert using MySQL. Okay, and that we want to run this every night. So you could use our scheduling model. Okay, so you can schedule. If you like cron, you can write your own cron expression. But if you don't like cron, you may use our visual designer just to schedule the execution as you could need. And also providing the parameters, okay? You can schedule different executions with different parameters, okay? Let's go to another example. For example, this one that is using a GraphQL API, okay? Here we have the execution. If we run it, we can see here all the logs, yeah? All the executions are registered here in the executions tab. So here we can see our previous executions. But for this one, we have started it here on demand, but a much more interesting approach could be just create one webhook with authentication or without authentication. And when we create one webhook, we can use an HTTP endpoint. So if we go to any other external tool, for example, a terminal, and we paste this sentence, when we call this webhook, the execution has started, and here we have the results, okay? And here we can go to executions, and here we see this execution, okay? Now, if we do some changes, for example, I don't want the image, just remove, save, and if you run again the execution, you have the new source code running, okay? No deployments. Here, any source code change is instantly working, okay? So, these are the processes. Okay, all of this has been JavaScript, but we also support Python, for example. This is the hello world with Python, okay? And again, it's just running, okay? And you may have all the schedules that you could need, all the credentials for all your integrations, no? Snowflake, Airtable. Here on the documentation, you can see all the platforms that we are able to work, and we are continuously adding more integrations, okay? Another module that developers appreciate a lot are the modules, okay? What is this? We are big fans of clean code, so you don't need to repeat code in any of your processes, okay? Let's say that you want to call one common function from this process and from this other one. So you may create one module, and then you can import this module from your processes and use it. For example, here we have a Kraken that is one exchange, and here we have one client, okay, implemented in JavaScript. So here, if we go to this process, we could see that it's using two modules, and here we can see the module, edit the module, use the model that is here imported, okay? We also have secrets and environment variables, so you can create any parameter, and then you can use in your source code just with the code.m and your name, okay? The variables can be secret or unsecret, and also multi-line if needed, okay? And another interesting feature from YepCode is that our main target are development teams. It's not also single developers can use the platform, of course, but when developer teams use the platform, they can take the most of it. No? And here on the audit, you can see, for example, the source code change that we already have done. Here we can see it in a Git diff approach, okay? Or any execution, the IPs where the webhooks were called, when someone creates one process and one deletes one process. So everything is here, and you can, any manager can be aware of what is happening on their team, okay? I can show you one of our internal teams from one of our companies, and here you can invite your members, okay? And any member can have different roles, executor, only with permissions to start executions, developer, etc., okay? Well, the best way to discover the platform is just go to our docs. Here we have everything in a very detailed way. Okay, all the source code snippets, how you can access to comments, to IDs, all the documentation for the input parameters. You can the variables. This is a very interesting feature, the versioning, because it's something that no-code tools usually don't have. Okay, let's say that we have a process and we are comfortable with it, and we want to release one version. Okay, we can publish a new version, give it a tag, and then when we start the execution, we can select which version of the source code we want to run. Okay, and with the webhooks, the same. You can tell, okay, here it is, the version 2.0, okay? And when we are calling this webhook, if you pass a header tag, this execution will pick this version of the source code. This is very interesting to release one source code and use it from one external system, and then keep developing the new version of the process, okay? Then executors can be on demand, scheduled, webhook. We also have execution handler to when you can configure one handler to retrieve executions or to send one Slack message with the errors, etc. Okay. The integrations that we have already shown. Libraries, we also have some common libraries that developers always want to have in their platform, because this is important, because you can't require any library from, for example, in JavaScript, you can add any NPM library, okay? Because there is no deployment phase. So we are also including the libraries that our clients are happy to enjoy in the platform, okay? The audit events that we have already shown. And then other interesting and advanced features, okay? Like, for example, our CLI, our command line interface, okay? All the code is developed in one browser, okay? But developers usually prefer to work offline, okay? And take advantage, for example, of GitHub Copilot, okay? So we have created a CLI that is a package that you may install in your workstation, and you may perform one login, okay? And when you have done the login, you may clone your team to your local workstation. So you have all your JavaScript or Python code in your workstation, and you can develop offline and then and run the executions offline. And when you are comfortable, you can perform one push to the YepCode cloud, okay? Or one pull. Let's say that one of your colleagues have implemented some new feature, you can download the source code, okay? And this is a very interesting feature, no? The client. It allows also some advanced use case. For example, integrate YepCode in one pipeline, okay? You may have your YepCode team for staging, and in your CDCAI lifecycle, you can download the code from your staging environment and push your code to your productive environment, okay? So it's something that opens a lot of options, okay? Then, regarding to network access, as you may suppose, the YepCode cloud needs access to the services that you want to talk with, okay? There is the option to give access to our egress IP, but it's not the most interesting. But we have also implemented one tunneling system that is using secure SSH tunnels, and you can open one tunnel using some Docker image that we may provide to avoid the need to open any firewall rule. Okay, and an interesting approach related to the network is to go for one of our on-prem deployments. Okay, here in our blog we have a lot of use cases, but we have also talked about how the YepCode tech stack is. Okay, and here we can. Okay. here you can see that YepCode is a web application, some microservices, some database, but here is the most interesting part. It's a layer of executors, okay? So when you start one execution, it's stored, one engine picks this execution and published to one MQQ, and then one executor layer picks this execution and runs the code, okay? Talking with an external service, and returns the logs and the execution results, okay? We may provide on-prem options for the full solution for all the microservices or our identity provider that we use, Keycloak, etc. But a much more interesting approach could be only have on-prem installations for the executor layer. So you may use YepCode Cloud for the web, for the database, for the logging, audit, etc. But when you press run or when you start one webhook execution, this can be running in your cloud. Okay, so we are running on Google Cloud, but you could have your installation on AWS. So no egress of information and no need to open any firewall rule. Okay, this is something that we have worked a lot and is very interesting in enterprise clients. Okay. And one of the last features that we have included in YepCode some weeks ago and is making a lot of noise are the forms. Okay, what are forms? Coming back to the one process, here you have the code to manage the execution, but the parameters schema, as I have said, may ask for any kind of information. Okay. But you have to be inside the code to start this execution. But we have implemented a external SDK system. So if you enable forms for this the code process, and you pick this code, it's just HTML snippet, and it's a div and one SDK. So if you add this in any web page, for example, here, you may start executing from any web page. Okay, for example, from Webflow, you may paste this snippet on Webflow, and when you write something here and you start executing, this is running the YepCode processes, and here you have the output. Okay, you can manage the output also of the process. Let's say that you are implementing one searcher. And you could use the output and show the results. Okay, here you have all the documentation. We provide the SDK in JavaScript or also with a React component that is very interesting to include YepCode forms in any React app and also manage the output. Okay, on success, on error, and use the retrieved information. Okay. And this is the full demo of the platform, but we also have other interesting pieces in the YepCode universe. For example, the recipe. Okay, we know that facing an empty source code editor may be hard because you have to start from scratch, and we have created recipes for that. Let's say that you want to pick information from one MongoDB, and then push that information to, I don't know, to one REST API, okay? So you look for this, oh, this is the recipe that I want, okay? And here we have the snippet, okay, to pick information from the MongoDB and also to push information to your REST API. So, okay, this is the thing I need. You may use this recipe, clone this recipe to your team, you pick your team, and this is creating the full, okay, I already have the one with the same name, okay. You may have here the full source code for your processes, and also one module that picks each entry from Mongo and push to the REST API. So now you need to create your MongoDB credential, okay, I need to create my MongoDB credential with the URL, user password, your REST credential, and change your database name, your collection name, your path in the REST API, but you have the skeleton to build this feature, okay? So it's a very interesting way to get started, okay? So I hope that you have enjoyed this short demo. I have been as quick as possible, but remember that our documentation is pretty complete and you have everything here. Well, I have forgotten to talk about how YepCode is sold. That is something very important also. Well, we follow a product-led growth approach, so you may start to use YepCode for free, okay? The free plan included 5,000 executions, 5,000 jobs, and also with some daily limits, okay? And also, we have limitations in terms of the execution time, okay? And it's also a single developer team with only a few days of history. And then when you need more power, you may perform one upgrade just inside the platform, okay? It's a self-serve approach. So you may go for more executions, more execution time, more members, more forms. And then if you need even more, you can go to the growth plan. And then we also have enterprise plans when you need full on-prem implementations, when you want to use your external identity provider, etc. And the last version that we are offering is one OM version. Okay, what is this? Let's say that you have a SaaS platform and your end users have development capabilities. Okay, so you may hire YepCode and under a white label approach and embed YepCode into your SaaS. So with this approach, you may offer to your end users a serverless corporate environment to talk with your SaaS, no? And it's something that is very interesting to increase your engagement with your users, okay? Also, you can visit our blogs where we have a lot of use cases from our clients and for sure join our community where a lot of those are solved every day, visit our facts, etc. So thanks a lot for your time. I hope that you have enjoyed this demo.